Hi everyone. I had intended to get this video out yesterday, but I had unexpected guests, which was nice, and I had to cook, which was nice. So I'm a bit tired today though. Anyhow, I in thinking about this video, a follow on from the first about taking people to court for medical negligence, I thought I'd better check some notes because I was a bit iffy about the timing of when certain things happened. So I think the best way to do this really is to use this, which is one of the bundles, of statements and other bump that I received from the court to go through, and I think I've got the right one to go through my witness statements here, and it's not going straight into the court case, it's going into the psychological effect of the surgery, post-surgery. Yeah, so I'll start here. Right, start here. Everything that I'd said to you about the pains going on for months and I couldn't do anything, and I could hardly move, and my son had to have my dog. So I'll start Christmas. Christmas has always been a big thing here, and it's been me and Alfie and all our kids and the grandchildren all gathering together. And of course it wouldn't have been with Alfie, we would have been with Alfie on the morning and then all coming back here for Christmas dinner, all of us. This Christmas 2013, that didn't happen because I was so poorly. And I'm going to read you because it's easier. I spent most of Christmas 2013 on my own, which had never been the case before. I could only manage to visit my husband briefly with the support of my son and his partner. I couldn't even eat a mouthful of mashed potato and spent most of the day in bed because of the pain. And then it goes on, when my son found me on the floor, doubled up in pain, got to the hospital, stayed overnight because they said I needed to be rehydrated. I was very dehydrated. There was blood in my urine. That was the day that, the following morning, when that doctor came round and said he was going to have me forcibly removed unless I removed myself. So let's go on to January 2014. By January 2014, the pain in my abdomen changed and became even more intense. It felt like someone had pushed a shovel into my stomach and was twisting and digging into it. It felt as though I was bleeding from my gut. Well, I said that. I mean, this statement, that was going on a bit before then. On 16th of January 2014, I received a home visit from Dr. I begged him for an epidural, which I mentioned about begging for an injection. I begged for an epidural or anything to make the pain cease. I indicated a small glass of water on the table, saying I couldn't even take the smallest of sips. He prescribed Zomorph, which I mentioned yesterday, the day before, with no thought as to how I would collect it because I couldn't walk. Anyway, my son got that. I asked if the Zomorph would interact with my other medications. I was told no, it was safe. So my son got the prescription. I slept for 2 hours, following which I woke confused and disorientated. On the 17th of January, the pain changed and I collapsed at home. That was, it must be another statement. It must have been updated because I was lying on the sofa after the sleep, and when I woke up, I collapsed and felt as though somebody had just stuck the thing into me, like I said to you. Mentions about the first responder, about the treat. I received treatment in the ambulance outside my house, following which I arrived at the QE and received a professional examination from Mr. Marriott. He said that some of my stomach was dead and that I needed surgery. He explained that this would be quite extensive surgery and there was a chance that I would not survive it. I underwent tests, abdominal x-ray, chest x-ray, CT scan. The results showed that I suffered from a duodenal ulcer which had perforated and required urgent surgery. Mr. Desire, surgeon, said he needed to get me into surgery urgently within the next half an hour. I was taken for surgery early on the morning of the 18th of January. I was in surgery for around 8 hours. All of this was played out also on YouTube, with my son giving a blow account of it to animal rights groups, animal rights people that I was heavily involved with. Post-surgery, recovered from the anaesthetic, awoke in the high dependency unit, receiving one-to-one nursing care for the next few days while I remained on the ward. I was taking extremely strong painkillers, including ketamine, which is what they give horses, and was delirious for most of this time. I remember thinking that the walls were closing in on me. They were going in and out, in and out. I also remember Mr. Marriott came to see me, although I cannot recall much of what he said. When I was moved from the high dependency unit onto a surgical ward, I was unable to eat and obtained nourishment via a drip, which is what I said to you. I was so thin and weak that they needed to build me up. Because I am vegan, I had to have special bags made which contain no eggs. After a little while, after a few weeks, I began to eat a small amount of mushy food, such as half a Weetabix. I could not eat much because my stomach had shrunk from how little I had been eating, and also bear in mind they'd taken part of my stomach away. I was also conscious of not wanting to antagonise my digestive system due to what I had been through. I was told that I would be on the ward for 6 weeks whilst I recovered. I worked hard to reduce this time. I think I reduced it by about 2 weeks. I did everything the nurses told me to, and even managed to walk with their support after a week or so to the shower. I was discharged after a few weeks because of how well I'd been progressing. The pain in my abdomen after surgery had completely gone, which was a massive relief. I only suffered from some general surgical pain. However, this resolved as I healed and recovered. This again, I told you, following my discharge, Dr. Zomorth visited me at home with another doctor. I screamed at him to get out, as I did not want to see him, and I heard him say to James and his partner that I was likely to need psychiatric intervention and counselling. He also apologised to me, saying, "We let you down, I'm sorry, we don't always get it right." They didn't get it right for almost a year. I felt that I also received very cavalier treatment from Professor, as I often had to telephone, as I telephoned continuously. in order to receive scan results and in an attempt to expedite my treatment. Following surgery, I underwent 2 further endoscopies. First of these was very uncomfortable and painful. However, the second was not too bad. It was conducted by my surgeon. The endoscopy showed I was suffering from a second ulcer. However, there were no concerns and it hasn't caused me any pain. And it hasn't, touch wood, up till now, but occasionally now I'm feeling certain problems. So maybe again. I was very weak when discharged from hospital, spent most of my time in bed. My son and I had been tentatively planning to go on holiday to Australia in around March 2014 to see a close friend of mine who lives in Bendigo. These plans never came to fruition as a result of my continuing drastic decline, and the trip will never happen. And then it goes on about the physical problems I've endured since. Although I no longer experience any pain in my abdomen, which makes me certain that the pain I experienced was purely as a result of my ulcer and was unrelated to collapsed vertebrae. Psychological effects, and I think it's important that I say this before getting on to the court things, so there will be a third video. Psychological effects. Prior to surgery, I suffered from a lot of trust issues because nobody would believe me about the extent of pain I was experiencing. Although this was mostly my GP, I also felt like my family found it difficult to believe me due to the lack of medical concern. The pain which I was suffering I can only describe as the most brutal of labour pains, which continued day and night. I did not believe that my body could physically withstand such a prolonged, agonising onslaught, and I knew that I would die. I resigned myself to the fact that one of my children would find me dead at home one day, and I would have died alone, with nobody to listen to me, nobody to help me. After the surgery, I felt violated and not like myself anymore. When I arrived home after being discharged, I was very tearful, kept experiencing flashbacks of the collapse. The flashbacks and terribly distressing dreams, although diminishing, continue to this day, and they continue to this day too. I believe that the spectre of that wretched and prolonged period of misery will never leave me. I became more depressed as time went on, and I reflected upon what had happened to me and the treatment I had received. In around November 2015, I had a breakdown and felt suicidal. I no longer thought there was any point in being alive. I felt that I somehow let everybody down and was worthless. Let my husband down by not visiting him, by not keeping my eye on the ball, and he was ill in the nursing home, all of that sort of stuff. I packed a suitcase with a few belongings and walked out of my house, although I had no idea where I was going. I somehow ended up getting on a train to Torquay and was going to throw myself under a bus. I was very close to doing this. However, I thought of my family and somehow found the strength to continue with my life. After a few days, I made my way home, but I was frightened by the intensity of the thoughts and feelings I was experiencing about harming myself. So difficult to remember this. I was experiencing about harming myself. I suffered from terrible nightmares, which meant I was getting very little sleep. Intense flashbacks of me collapsing on the floor. A short while later, I saw a number, whatever bus, driving down a certain road and walked towards it. I was not sure what I was going to do. However, I was very frightened at the thoughts I was experiencing. I went to my GP where I saw a doctor who I'd never seen before. He prescribed me with some antidepressants. Doctor tried to telephone me in the afternoon. However, I had not gone home, and so I did not answer. I understand that Doctor went to my house with some policemen, but when they found I was not at home, they left, leaving one of the policemen at my home waiting for me. I am unsure where I went after I left the GP. It's blank in my memory. I arrived home several hours later to find the policeman waiting for me. He wanted to come in the house with me, but I wouldn't let him. Shortly after this, I consented to being admitted to the psychiatric unit in a certain hospital. Despite this being a voluntary admission, I feel I would have been kept had I tried to refuse. I was supervised with taking my medications to ensure that I did take them, which was a relief to me as I was rather unsure as to what I was doing with them when I was at home. I spoke to a psychologist and psychiatrist whilst I was in hospital. I remained there for 7 weeks. When I was discharged, I was a nervous wreck and felt that I should have remained in hospital for longer. I tried to carry on as normal, however found this difficult because of everything I had been through. The fact that my dog needed to live with my son whilst I was ill. I could no longer oversee my husband's care in the nursing home. The same evening as I got back from the hospital, I got my feet tangled in a sheet which I was washing. I fell, fractured my hip. I managed to drag myself into the living room to the phone. It took me an hour and a half, and phoned for an ambulance. I was taken to hospital and received hip replacement surgery. I remained in hospital for 5 days. And although my hip is now fine, I do have a large scar and experience pain in my groin, even if only walking a short distance. And in fact, this is the hip that I've had to have revision surgery on just a few months ago. So, attending fortnightly appointments with a psychiatrist. On one occasion, he asked me if I felt I should be back in hospital, to which I answered that I was unsure. I know that I need help and support. However, I am unsure as to whether the hospital is the best place I also receive a home visit from a psychologist every 2 weeks. I find her much easier to talk to and can be a little more open with her about what I am experiencing. I have not received any formal diagnosis yet, but it seems to be accepted that I am suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of the treatment and non-treatment I received. Goes on about my weight at being around 5 stone 8, which is 78 pounds. At all of my doctor's appointments, my weight was commented on and a big issue made about my drastic weight loss. I refused to step onto the scales after a while as it got me so concerned about my weight. I regained about 2 stone eventually. And says later on, I struggle to find any enjoyment from anything now. I no longer go out to get my hair done or leave the house at all. I make no effort with my appearance any longer. I used to be very active and would go swimming, jogging and for long walks with my dog. I was also very active in promoting animal rights, veganism and environmental issues. I no longer take part in any of these activities and get no exercise. The only hobby I really have anymore is reading. My experiences of such debilitating pain and cavalier treatment at a time when no one would listen to me has had a snowball effect which has impacted upon all aspects of my daily life. My head can be quite fuzzy at times and I can even struggle to focus. I've been prescribed antidepressants to help me cope. Tried several, some of which had adverse effects. One medication had me so out of it that I would walk into doors. I started taking 10 milligram doses, which has been increased twice to the current prescription of 20 milligram. And I'm still on that now. I feel like this is beginning to have some positive impact upon my mental state, and I do not have negative thoughts as regularly as I used to. I think that actually now, these years later, time has helped, but also what hasn't helped is having this court case hanging over me and the constant bundles of papers. And apparently only 2% of cases get to court, and mine, unfortunately, was one of the 2%. So it goes on about other stuff, psychological stuff, which you don't really need to listen to. But I felt that that needed to be said about the nervous breakdown I had because of the treatment I'd suffered, the treatment I didn't have really, and the suffering that I was going through for a prolonged period, and the eventual surgery, which has left a scar, as I said, from just under my breastbone to down to just above my pubic bone. And then the breakdown and then coming out that night and falling and breaking my hip. You know, it was like a series of unfortunate events. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. I will say this about, because it's relevant now. I find I am falling over a lot more than I used to. And I believe that this is because I've been so weakened by the treatment I received, and because I am so nervous psychologically. True today. It worries me, as I know that falling over means I will require more medical treatment. I am also concerned about the amount of medications I am prescribed, which I've reduced. And although I have discussed it with the doctor, I'm reluctant to revisit the surgery. So, the falling over, the antidepressants, the effect on me psychologically, the ripple effect. Since that, I've had 2 fractured hips, a fractured collarbone from when I was on an antidepressant that got me so I didn't know where I was, what I was doing, whether it was Sunday or Friday, and I walked into a door jam and fractured my collarbone. So I've had a fractured collarbone, 2 fractured hips, and a few months ago, hip revision on the first hip, which was just not done right. So that's a saga, and then we'll get on to the court case, which I'm sure is what you want to hear about, because I won it, and I'll be back.